an ownership mentality. The idea that has most radically transformed my life within this last year has been that idea of having ownership. And not just ownership saying, hey, it's mine, but extreme ownership. Saying, no, this is not just something that I'm a part of, but this is something not just that I oversee, but I want to have an ownership mentality over everything that I'm a part of, because there's a difference when you have an ownership mentality and when you don't. I'm not going to share a ton of passages with you this morning, but I'm going to share one this morning called in Luke chapter 12, verse 48. It's only one verse. You can listen with me. Jesus is speaking to the disciples. He said, from everyone whom has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. I want you to know right now that you have been entrusted with something precious. You have been entrusted not only with a gospel message that transforms and changes people's lives, but you've been entrusted with the very saints that Christ died for. It struck me a couple weeks ago when I was sitting in the back of the auditorium watching. We had something like 10 people getting baptized, and I was sitting there and I was watching people get baptized. And I don't know about you, but there's sometimes when God speaks more profoundly to me just in the back of a room than he does in the word sometimes. And so I was standing in the back of the room watching the people get baptized, and I felt the Lord speak to me this simple thing: I've died for those people. He wasn't speaking to me somebody who was just sitting in a seat in the auditorium. He was speaking to me in the back of the room as I was looking at the middle of the row as they were interviewing to get baptized. He was saying, those people, Josiah, those people, they might not look like much to the world, but those people are the ones that I have paid the ultimate price for. Those people. Those are the ones that I sent my son the ultimate price to die on the cross, to suffer for those people. Those people are precious to me. I was like, oh, God, why are you in church right now? I don't want to cry. Come on, God. And he was just speaking to me, the importance of the people that I was ministering to, which then elevates the importance of what I do. See, each and every one of you in this room has been entrusted with so much. Not only has God entrusted you with the gospel and put you in a part of an amazing church, but each and every one of you are involved in ministry, serving the King of all kings and Lord of all lords. You are serving him. I know you're serving your church, and I know you're serving the people, but the scripture is very clear that when you serve the people of God, you are serving God himself. It goes so far as to say that you are showing your love to God in doing that. And to me, that's an incredible thing to think week after week after week after week, we get to serve the one who paid it all. Extreme ownership. I want to give you 3 points this morning about ownership. And this is really more of a leadership lesson. But like I said, this has been a lesson that this year has altered and radically changed the way that I do ministry and the way that I lead. And so with each and every one of you entrusted with different leadership responsibilities and different people that God has entrusted you with, I want to encourage you and challenge you this morning to change. If you feel like you were like me and you were serving, you were faithful, but you didn't have that ownership mentality, I want to challenge you to walk out of here with that ownership mentality, okay? Number 1, if you're taking notes, owners take responsibility. You're taking notes. Owners take responsibility. On any team and in any organization, all responsibility for success and failure rests upon the leader's shoulder. You are fully responsible for everything that happens under you. You know, when somebody is coming over to our house and we have a gathering, a small group gathering, we have the elders over, I always know because everyone in the house is put on duty to clean the entire house. I don't know about you if you're like that, but if anybody's coming over, I mean anybody, the whole house has to be scrubbed down just the bathroom floors, everything has to be spick and span perfectly clean. And so we know, we kind of dread sometimes like, oh man, people are coming over. It means we're going to be Cinderella through their house, just clean, And so every once in a while we have people come over, and my mom will make sure that we all do our job and make sure that the house is spick and span, nice and clean. And she does that because it reflects her. If the house is dirty, then she feels like, wow, that is a reflection on who I am because the house represents me. You know what she's never asked us to do? Hey, let's go over to this house where the Johnsons invited us over for dinner. Let's go over an hour or two early and let's clean up their house for them. I've never been asked to go, my mom's never asked me to go over to somebody else's house and clean a couple hours, make sure their house is clean before we come over. You know why? It's not her house. It doesn't represent her. It doesn't show anything about her. It's not her responsibility. She is not the owner of somebody else's house. But when it's her house, she feels a responsibility to make sure it's in tip-top shape because it represents her. How we conduct ourselves and how you conduct the ministry that you're leading or a part of represents not only you, not only the church, but represents Christ. Represents Christ to all the world. Each and every single one of us have guests or visitors that come into our church on a weekly basis. Some people, for years, they have not been into a church and they come and they join the gathering at your location. Do you know that they are walking in there, and whether you like it or not, they're making assumptions, they're making judgments, and they have ideas about what you believe just based upon how ministries are run, how the building is clean, if parking is done right, if they were greeted in a certain way or not greeted. They are making judgments, they are making opinions, not only about the church, not only about you, but about Christ. If we cannot perform to an excellent degree, what does that say about our God? If we can't do things to the best of our abilities, what does that say about the one that we serve? Every single week, people come into our midst and they're trying to figure out, what are these people about? It's incredible when I talk to people and they come into our midst and they hear the worship music. And you guys hear this at your congregations, in your locations. They hear the music and they say, I feel the presence of God. There's people that get more out of the worship music than they do out of the message. Sometimes they come and tell me, hey, Pastor, your message was good, but man, that worship. And I high five them and say, yeah, that worship, me too. That was powerful worship. Do you know that I have friends that have gone to other churches, and I have one good friend of mine who travels all over the country, been to every church you can imagine. Do you know what he told me one time? He came to me and he said, Josiah, he named this certain church. He said, I know a lot of people don't like this church, and I'm not a big fan of the pastor by any means. But he said, I want to tell you something. I said, what? He said, I have never been to a church. I mean, this is a church, big money in the music, great speaker, huge facility. There's a lot of things to be like, wow. And he said, the thing that stuck out to me the most is this is what he said, I have never been to a church and been so warmly greeted as that church. That's what marked him. That's what touched him. The greeting came in the door. He's like, the sermon, the worship, everything else. It was the greeting of somebody who lovingly said, hey, we are so happy to have you here, a part of us. It was that warmth. He said, I have never felt that at any other church. Glory to God. That even somebody greeting somebody with a warmth and a love can say, wow, I see the excellence of your God in this. See, when you take ownership of the ministry or the church that you are a part of, you are saying that every success and every failure is directly my responsibility. When people aren't doing what they should be doing, or they're not doing it to the excellence that they should, and they are part of your ministry under your leadership, under what you're calling them to do, people with extreme ownership, they cannot blame those people, but they must take the responsibility of those people's excellence or their poor performance on themselves. Let me give you some examples. Let's say somebody that week forgot to buy the coffee for the cafe. If you are overseeing the cafe, that's not the person that forgot to bring the coffee's fault. That's your responsibility. Well, Pastor, what do you mean? I mean, they were supposed to, they were on the schedule. No. I get it, that there's part of their schedule, that it's part of their responsibility. But you, as the leader, taking extreme ownership of everything that's under you, even somebody that doesn't bring the coffee, that's your responsibility to make sure it happens, and it happens on time. When the parking lot guy he's out there in the cold, and he's already angry because it's cold, and he's, oh, am I on here? And he had a bad morning, and a guest comes and parks right in the middle of two spots. He's already on edge. But then he says, this guy. I mean, I'm praying, Lord, but that must be Satan, because there's no way. There's no way, Lord. Hey, when that parking guy flips out or yells at that guest because of the way that he parked in the parking lot, that's not the parking guy's fault. That's your responsibility. You say, well, it was his job. He's got an anger issue. Well, maybe he shouldn't be in the role then, but that is your responsibility as a leader to make sure that you have the right people on the team, or you don't have other people on the team that shouldn't be there. That is your and my responsibility. Someone at your church, you got a good worship team, but there's that one person. And you're pretty sure they're tone deaf. I mean, you didn't do a test or anything, but you're pretty sure, they're tone deaf. I mean, everyone else is singing on key, and they're, Lord Jesus, bless you, Lord. And I know I should be on the worship team, and I know they love the Lord a lot. And I know you feel like, well, this is the only person, but hey, you cannot say the worship isn't quality because of that person. No, you need to say the worship isn't quality because I oversee it. It's my responsibility. If something is falling below the line of excellence and you feel like, well, that's that person, they need to get their issue together, they need to do a better job, I'm doing all that I can. Our extreme ownership mentality needs to say, no, God has entrusted me with the responsibility of making sure that this ministry is excellent, so it doesn't fall on them, it falls on me, and I stand before the King of all kings and Lord of all lords one day to represent him in the way that I handle this ministry. To whom much has been given, much will be demanded. Leadership has demands on it. That's part of the game. That's part of the calling. If you're afraid of getting criticized, or you can't take criticism, you should not be in a leadership position. Do you know how many people I have that criticize me or tell me this or tell me that? I mean, I could give you some really great stories. Let me tell you one just for humorous effect, right? I had a guy, I've had multiple of these, but I had a guy, I'll tell you the girl story. I had a girl come in, and she said, oh, I've been listening to your dad on the radio for a long time. I said, oh yeah, me too. He's great. And I live with him, and You know what really freaks me out? Sometimes I turn the car on and the radio will be on, moody. And like I just talk with him. I come outside, I turn the radio, I was like, ah! It's like I freak out. It's like, I know I shouldn't be hearing his voice there. I had a woman come up to me. I just finished preaching, poured my heart and soul, boom, 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 put it out there like here, Lord, it's all. I was just preaching. And this woman comes up to me. Oh, the radio, I really love your dad on the radio. I said, oh, great. And she said, I was really, really hoping he was going to be here today. I said, yeah, he's in Spain. He's in Spain right now, so they're away. They usually go away for 1 month in the summer, but if you come back another week, I'm sure you can be able to listen to him. She goes, I was really wishing that he was going to be here today. Like, woman, like, what do you want me to do? I can't make him appear. Hey, listen, people will criticize you. People will criticize you, sometimes even unknowingly. Can I say that? Sometimes even unknowingly. And you just put your heart and soul into something, and they'll come and they'll say, you know what, it wasn't so great. Whoever's part of that, and you're leading it. Whoever did that, it's not so great, or this and that. And you're like, well, I'm pouring my heart and my soul into this. And sometimes that happened. But you know what my dad told me right on the first, when I stepped in the ministry. He warned me of some of the challenge, but he told me this. He said, Josiah, this just stay with me. Josiah, if you take people's praise lightly, then you will also take their criticism lightly. If somebody comes to you and they tell you, wow, you're the greatest thing since Jesus. I mean, you are so great. I love just the way you are, just the embodiment of Jesus when you walk. I mean, I could just, it's just changes when you come in the room. Now you're walking around like, yeah, the embodiment of Jesus. Hey, you could have the greatest praise report, and it's great when people encourage and they build you up, but don't let that go to your head and then to your heart. Because if you allow that to start being the fuel that catapults you into doing what you do, the moment that somebody criticizes you or the work that you're doing or somebody underneath you, you will unravel and fall apart because you have built up your service to God on praise of others and not on His praise. It's a lesson to be learned. See, when you take full ownership and responsibility, we don't work in this game of, hey, I'm going to try to blame shift onto somebody that's under me because I don't want to be the one that gets the heat. No, when you're the leader, you take the heat. When you're the leader, that means you're a more mature believer and you're serving. Do you understand that in the position that you're at, it's not you're at the top of the triangle and everyone's beneath you. It's upside down. You being in the position that you're at doesn't mean that more people serve you. It means that you get to serve more people. It means that you have the opportunity and the privilege to serve more people and to show the people that you're serving that you do things with excellence and that you are trying to honor Christ with everything that you do. I run into people every once in a while that come and they come up to me with good intentions and good heart, but they have a certain type of mentality. They don't have an ownership mentality. They have a victim mentality. And I had one brother who came up to me week after week after week, and I walked him through this issue and I gave him steps. And the next week he came up to me and said, this is the situation, and this person's wrong me, and this person's hurt me, and this person let me down, and my small group leader wasn't here for me, and they didn't call me, and this, and I said, hey, I hear you, brother. Let me, I'm with you. Let me give you some steps to take. Week after week, then he wouldn't show up, and I would see him every once in a while, and he'd have the same exact problems. And bring it up to me with the same exact passion and frustration and this. And he would bring it up to me. And I just stopped him one day. One day after I was done preaching, I just stopped him. I said, hey, brother. I said, how many times have we talked about this same issue? I mean, I have to have talked with you a dozen times and given you the same action steps. And still you have not taken any action on what I've encouraged you to do. But pastor, you don't understand. My sister, my cousin, my brother, my aunt, my sister, I was like, my small group leader, this person, my boss at work, he didn't. It's like just a list of people, a list of excuses why he can't change or get him out of the situation. Can I tell you, until he breaks the victim mentality that he's in, he will be stuck in the cycle of the same problems to the day that he dies. See, to start the process of change, to unlock the door of change, it starts with the key of saying, I take responsibility for my actions. I take responsibility for the state of my marriage. I take the responsibility for the state of my health. I take responsibility for the state of the ministry that I lead. The state of the ministry that I lead. See, accepting responsibility opens this door to change, and it can only be unlocked by accepting that and saying, I have ownership and responsibility over what I have been called to do. Shifting blame to other people, even if they've done wrong. I'm not saying there's people in your ministry who aren't doing the best job, who aren't serving to their full capacity, who aren't lazy or dropping the ball, who don't mess up sometimes. What I'm saying is when you shift the blame and somebody says, hey, why was the words not on the screen? Why was the audio off? Why was there no greeter by the door? Why was there only one parking lot guy in attendance? And you go, well, it was this person's fault or that person's fault or their fault, or they should have been here on time. When you do that and you shift blame, instead of taking the responsibility and saying, no, I take responsibility for whatever happens, when you shift blame, you lose trust amongst your team, you lose respect amongst your team, and you lose loyalty. When you take responsibility, everything flips. You gain trust, you gain respect from your team, and you gain loyalty. What you choose, the example that you choose to lead, the way that you choose to run the ministry, not only affects you, but you will be a mirror and you will reproduce. Listen to me. You will reproduce the attitude that you have. If your attitude is one of always blame shifting to somebody else as to why things are going wrong. And listen, I'm speaking to this not out of someone who's trying to beat you down. I'm speaking to this as someone who's saying, I'm still trying to learn this. I'm still trying someone who's trying to figure this out. And when it gets tough and when it's a big blunder, to not say, hey, it's this person or that person who oversees those people or that ministry leader or that team leader or that small group leader. No, I need to stop and say, it is my responsibility because I oversee them, and that's part of being a leader. See, when you feel ownership, when you walk into your church, you look around and say, is there trash out here? Is there trash on the floor? Because this isn't the pastor's church, or this isn't the elder's church or the ministry leader. This is my church. This isn't Pastor Andrew's church. This is the Lord's church that I'm a part of. This is my church. You know, language says a lot about people, and I talk to people who say, oh, yeah, I'm going to that church or this church, or I visited New Life, and then I talk to people who say, no, I'm going to my church, New Life. I'm going to my church. I'm a part of that church. There's this shift what happens. There's a real change that happens when you start really believing ownership and taking ownership over something, that even your language will start to mirror the way that you actually feel about that place. I have never had somebody come up to me and they say, hey, can you point me to the bathroom? I go, no. I only preach. Hey, there's a spill over there. Hey, you mind getting some paper? I only preach. I don't do that type of. That's below me, or that's out of my role. I do this. See, when you have an ownership mentality, you do that. When you have an ownership mentality, that's not somebody else's work. No, why does that become your work? That becomes your work because you're saying, this is my place, my house, my people, my community, my church, and it reflects me and the Lord of all lords and the King of all kings. So I'm not going to wait for somebody to do that. That's my responsibility because I am entrusted to him. See, there's a real change that happens, and I don't know, maybe it's not I preach for you, but maybe it's no, I do worship, or I clean the floor, or I greet people, or I do security, but there's a real change when you start saying, no, I'm not just my job title or my job description, but I have an owner mentality. It goes beyond what it says my role is. I have a different mentality. I have an ownership mentality of what God has entrusted me to. Number 2. Owners define standards. Now, I'm not saying you don't confront somebody on your team for not performing to the way that you want them to, or not to a degree of excellence, somebody that shows up late. I'm not saying, hey, you just don't talk to them and you just do it yourself. No. Owners take responsibility and they confront when there needs to be confrontation. They have the talks that need to happen. I talked with somebody this past week about having confrontations, about how those can be healthy and don't have to end in a negative way. See, the best way to define these standards or to get commitment from others is to show them that you are committed. You want to get commitment? You want to squeeze commitment out of your team? You feel like, they're not fully committed. They're not fully part of it. You want to get people to go to the next level? Show them that you are on the next level. You want to get people to be committed to what you're committed to the ministry that you're leading? Show them that you show up on time, that you get there early to make sure you're not late, that you are fully committed to this. And this is not an afterthought, because guess what? When people see that something is done and it's only an afterthought, then they make it an afterthought. Owners define standards. Let people know this is what it means to be part of the security team. This is what it means to be part of the children's ministry. This is what it means to be part of the announcers team. This is what it means to be an usher or to a greeter. This is what it means to be a parking lot. This is what it means. And even though you love the Lord, if you're not willing to meet these standards, then this is not the team for you. Do you understand that that's not being mean, but that's being faithful? That's not being mean to somebody to say no. That's being faithful to your Lord and your King and saying, I want this done to an excellent degree. And if there's somebody who's saying, hey, I don't know if I could meet all these standards, but I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to be mentored, I'm willing to be trained, then walk alongside them and help train them and encourage them and build them up to do it with excellence. When it comes to standards, listen closely to this. When it comes to standards, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. Listen, it's not what you write down on the standard sheet and staple on the wall. It's not what you just converse in your meeting and say, these are the standards that we're going to live by. This is what we're going to do. This is how a greeter and usher, this is how a member of the worship team lives. These are the standards we hold them to. It's not just that, because you can put 99 standards on the wall, but if you're tolerating somebody who's not fully living with excellence on your ministry team, they're showing up late, they're being lazy, they're not putting all their heart into it, they're not trained well, they're not doing it. If you're allowing somebody who's doing subpar performance to be part of the ministry and the team that you're part of, it will sink the entire ship. Once you say, hey, this is my standard, but then you tolerate somebody who they show up late every time, they're not there, they don't have their vest, they don't have their what do you call it? The lanyard, they don't have any of their stuff. When you act that way, you say, it's okay, most people are doing it, but it's okay that this one person, you have now lowered the bar. No matter what type of standards you hold yourself to, you put on a wall or you share in a meeting, you have now lowered the bar, and it's a matter of time before the rest of the team says, why should I live like this when I can live like this? So it is your responsibility as well as mine to have those conversations and to make sure that the right people are on your team and to make sure that you do not just set the standards, but you also don't tolerate when people don't reach or meet those standards. You know, when I was driving the same car as Grant, we're driving this gray van. You know, when I was driving it, it was pretty good for a while, and then Grant just drove that thing into the ground. I don't know what he was doing, but that car tanked real quick. You know, when me and Grant were sharing this van, and he would have some times he could drive it, I would have some times, it wasn't a huge deal to me if the car came back dirty. Like, it was like, okay, you know, Grant's a boy, and this is what he does, and Grant's messy, so. But if it came back a little messy, or there was Grant's stuff, his workout stuff, or his football stuff laying around, it wasn't like a huge deal. But when I got my own car, and it wasn't the newest, nicest car, but when I got my own car, and Grant said, hey, you know, the van's not working because I left the door open and the battery died. Do you mind if I drive your car? Then I'd be like, well, Grant, I'll let you drive my car, but you need to park all the way in the back where there's no cars in the back parking lot. You know, where all that, park next to the Mustang. I know it's not a Mustang, but park next to the Mustang. You need to make sure you're going 10 miles under the speed limit, put your blinker on 10, 20 feet before you hit the... I was like, hey, I gave Grant all these standards. Why? I didn't feel that same way when it was the van because the van wasn't mine. I was using it, but I wasn't an owner of it. And the mentality changed when I had my name on the title and it was my car. I started to feel different. I started to act different about the way I treated it and the standards that I held for it. When it was mine, when I felt that ownership, I held it to a whole other standard. I held it to a whole other standard. Let me finish off with the last point. I'm going to go through this quick. Number 3, owners, listen to this one. This one's big. This one's big. Owners redirect credit. Owners redirect credit. See, owners, listen to me. Owners take responsibility, but they give credit. Your job is to take the responsibility, take the ownership on, but your job is also to make sure that you are giving away the credit to everyone that is serving alongside you on your team. I felt like this year I learned the lesson of ownership and thanksgiving. But last year I felt like I learned the lesson of encouragement. And I started flipping through the scriptures that God has given us, and I started reading encouragement. Do you know that encouragement in Hebrews literally says and talks about that when you encourage somebody, you are keeping them on a path of spiritual health? That it equates you sharing. It's right after this verse, Hebrews 3:13. Encourage one another daily. It's right after this verse, and it says, so that they don't harden their hearts and fall away from God. I mean, that's the power of encouragement, to keep somebody, keep walking straight with fire and with passion for God. Often, leaders will take credit and they leave their team in a drought. And most often when I see this, some leaders and some ministry leaders are really, really good at giving their team recognition, at encouraging their team, giving their team the credit, building their team up. But some leaders, and let me tell you which type of leaders are. Typically, I see this in leaders that are insecure in who they are. And so they're like a sponge. Any encouragement or recognition comes their way. Lord help us. They take it like a sponge and they give none to anybody under them. What I've found is one of the most powerful and effective ways is to make sure and to have this mentality. If the team wins, I win. If the team wins, I win. If the team is encouraged, we win. If the team is motivated, we win. If the team feels heard and cared for, we win. And we win means the gospel goes forward. When we win, that means lives get changed. When we win, that means marriages are transformed. When we win, that means youth come to Christ. When we win, that means messages are preached and people give their life over to the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords when we win. So I'm going to go through these quick. I'm just going to name off a couple because I'm right at my time. But you can fuel your team for free and it costs you nothing with these three things: appreciation, recognition, and encouragement. Free. It costs you nothing but a few words and some time. Appreciation, recognition, and encouragement are the word R. No one ever says, I am getting way too much appreciation. Man, I am just so recognized this month. I feel like my brim of encouragement is just seeping over. Nobody says that. Usually people are burnt out, they're tired, they feel like they've given everything that they can give, but many people feel underappreciated, under-recognized, and they feel like they get no encouragement. Hebrews doesn't say encourage weekly, monthly, yearly, bi-weekly. It says encourage one another daily. And so I'm going to run through a couple quick. So number one, recognize team members by name. This is super powerful when you come to a team and you say, hey, not just my team members, but Sam, Sally, John. And you could go through the names. It's powerful when you remember somebody's name. Dale Carnegie said, remember that a person's name to that person is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. It is a compliment when you remember somebody's name. There's multiple techniques to remember, but even if you say somebody's name, you have to rhyme it or put it in your phone. Make it a habit. Make it a priority to make sure that you know the people in your ministry's name. Next is make it public and have private moments. One of the most powerful things is when you're in front of a group and you say, hey, I just want you to know that Jonathan has done an incredible job this last semester or this year leading the team, taking on more responsibility, joining our team. When you encourage somebody and build them up and recognize them in front of the whole team, that does wonders to fuel them and to motivate them to keep serving in a faithful way. Include their families. This is one that I'm starting to get better at, but I'm not great at this one. Include their families. Whenever possible, include the team member's spouse, partner, children, friends, or loved ones to share in the recognition. I can't tell you this, that when I've gone up to, and I'm working closely with a man in the men's ministry, and I meet his wife for the first time, and I recognize the growth and the change and the transformation that I've seen in him. I've seen couples cry right in front of me. Just break down crying, saying, God has been so faithful. I've had people in encouraging times, and I'll just take a moment to encourage them. I don't think much of it. I'm just taking a moment to speak into their life. Hey, I want you to know I've seen the growth. I've seen the way you faithfully serve week after week. I've seen you stay after hours. I've seen you do this. And I will have people say, something that's blatant and obvious to me, I'll have people say, I never knew that about myself. Are you just saying that? Do you really mean that? I really mean that. You see that in me? Yeah. Transforming power of encouragement. Let me give you one more. Make appreciation, recognition, and encouragement part of your routine. And there's multiple ways to do this. You can do face-to-face. You can do handwritten notes. You can do emails and cards. And make sure that you catch people doing something right. So often, I'm in ministry mode on Sunday where I'm looking at things that need to be fixed and improved. But don't get so stuck in a mentality where you're trying to find things to improve that you miss the good things that are already happening. Where you're so focused on, wow, this is improved and this is getting better and this needs to be fixed and wow, that was wrong or this needs to be changed. Don't get so caught in mentality of trying to improve that you miss the incredible work that God is doing right in front of your eyes. That you forget to recognize or appreciate or encourage the person that has been so faithful to serve week after week that they are doing a great job. Yeah, there's some people who aren't, but there's some people who are really serving with excellence on your team. Don't miss those people. Because if you miss those people enough, you'll lose those people. I want to challenge you to make sure that each and every one of us doesn't just have, hey, I'm just part of this team, or I'm just a servant. Yeah, we are those things. But I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to look at what you're doing and say, no, I'm not just the leader of this team, but I'm the owner. I want you to switch your mentality and say, I am responsible for everything that happens under me. And guess what? This is my church. And so if there's something that's not happening to an excellent degree, I want to say, what can I do to help? If I see garbage, I'm going to make sure I pick that up, because why? This is my church. And this represents the one that I love and am fully giving my life over to.